Okay, let's watch Second Thought, the most dangerous thing in the Western Hemisphere.
And others like it are brought to you by the generous support of my patrons on Patreon. If you'd like to help support this channel, join our growing Discord server, and get early access to every video, consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/secondthought.
First, I must confess that over the past few years I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in his stride toward freedom is not the white citizens' counselor or the Ku Klux Klaner, but the white moderate, who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is...
He never said that. Wait, what? He wrote this. What are you talking about? He literally wrote this famously in a letter from Birmingham prison.
The presence of justice, jail. Who constantly says, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I cannot agree with your methods of direct action. Who paternalistically believes he can set the timetable for another man's freedom.
That white person that you see calling himself a liberal is the most dangerous thing in the entire Western Hemisphere. He's the most deceitful. He's like a fox. And a fox is always more dangerous in the forest than the wolf. You can see the wolf coming. You know what he's up to. But the fox will fool you. He comes at you with his mouth shaped in such a way that even though you see his teeth, you think he's smiling and you take him for a friend.
Damn. All right. It's so funny because, like, old heads know this, but like one of the first real arguments that I had with the blue-haired one was literally me calling him a white moderate and him losing his fucking mind.
Rolling.
I know that shit will trigger his ass.
Okay, let's go. Over the past 5 months, just about everyone I know has come to the same conclusion. Dyed-in-the-wool liberals are as much the enemy of...
Oh, so right. Holy fuck, dude. Anyway.
Normal, decent people as conservatives are. And when I say liberal, I don't mean your average Joe who likes Harry Potter and Marvel movies and doesn't really think about politics outside of election years.
Will you shut up, man?
I mean the people who love Harry Potter and Marvel movies and also go out of their way to scold Palestinians for resisting their own extermination. People who demand you condemn Hamas while refusing to acknowledge that history didn't begin on October 7th. People who split their time evenly between rewatching Hamilton and calling anyone who criticizes...
Say the line, history will absolve me. I've never been more absolved by history. There are men and women out there that have had history absolve them. I am one of those people.
Criticizes Joe Biden,
and it
a Russian
happens
troll,
in real time all the fucking time.
Or a Chinese spy. I think you know the type. But just so we're on the same page before we go any further, let me be extra clear. Liberalism is the default ideology in the imperial core. The average person ends up with a liberal perspective by osmosis. There is a...
Bro, he's just generalizing and attacking a group, not Hasan though. Yes, dude. He's right. He's talking about people who adorn the aesthetics of liberalism and progress while simultaneously serving you a sloppy steak, simultaneously retriangulating and repositioning over and over again to put, in the words of Martin Luther King, a timeline on another person's righteous cause for trying to ensure emancipation for themselves. It's ridiculous.
Pipeline from simply existing in the empire to becoming a rabid servant of the empire. And if you feel like this is an attack on you personally, please don't feel that way. Everyone should be capable of changing their perspective when presented with new evidence. If you're not, that's a good sign you may have been indoctrinated into a dangerous ideology. But that's what this video is about. I'm going to give you just a little bit of evidence that Western liberals are a tremendous force for evil. And contrary to what they want you to believe, they absolutely do not care about truth, justice, peace, or progress. Let's start with the civil rights era. A lot of Americans today erroneously believe that when Dr. King came onto the scene, he magically opened everyone's eyes and ended racism. Sure, things were bad back then, but his words were so moving that everyone put down their pitchforks and agreed that we were all equal. And of course, the white liberals were marching hand in hand with black Americans to forge a path to a brighter future. While MLK did have a profound way with words, and there were indeed a number of white Americans.
I think leftists fail at allowing for a reform part. People may realize their mistaken beliefs, but we sure don't want to forgive or welcome reform people. There are some places where people do that. And I think that there are a lot of people who definitely are so frustrated with the sea of shit that they have to endure from people who have these like firmly held beliefs with nothing to back that, who are objectively immoral, that they develop a edge. That's what happens. That's why I'm very understanding usually of marginalized communities. Like I've talked about this with respect to the trans community. Like a lot of trans people, given the sea of attack, the constant fire that they're under, even in places that are supposed to be safe for them, like online communities and whatnot, oftentimes have a immediate reaction that is like, no, fuck you. I'm writing you off. You're transphobic. I'm very understanding of that because I get where they're coming from. Like if you're constantly under attack, both in very real material reality terms in the form of legislation, and then also even under attack in the internet sphere all the goddamn time, you're going to become like you're not going to always be empathetic to those who you think present a threat to your existence. Having said that, however, I always have a special designation, or not a special designation, but like I always treat professional commentators differently than the actual people in their audiences. I do believe that no matter what, people who aren't being basically paid to have these opinions do have the capacity to change. Even people who are being paid to have these opinions often have the capacity to change. I've shown that. I've shown you that both from my own personal development, but also beyond my own personal development with the likes of iDubbbz, for example. Great example of a person who had a lot of right-wing takes and right-wing opinions and genuinely reformed. It can happen. It's very hard, but it does happen. But yeah, that's something that I always stress in this community, to be understanding of people's like shortcomings and not allow those shortcomings to be super fucking, not allow those shortcomings to immediately met with like violent retaliation in the form of words still, but you know.
Americans who march for equal rights. This simplified view of the civil rights era is exceptionally misleading. Martin Luther King is one of the most co-opted figures in modern history. Everyone tries to claim him for their particular set of beliefs. I made a whole video about how history whitewashes black radicals. But the thing about these people waxing poetic about how great King was is that 90% of the time they would have hated the man had they lived in the same era. Think about your family members today and how they reacted to the Black Lives Matter rallies and protests. If they're anything like my family, you probably heard some pretty ignorant, hateful statements. The same exact thing happened in Dr. King's time. Police brutality, rampant racism, and constant attempts to misconstrue what the movement was really about. The thing that always concretizes that fact for me is this comic, by the white moderate cartoonist Charles Brooks. King talking to a reporter with the city destroyed in the background and some white people lying on the ground, and King saying, "I plan to lead another non-violent march tomorrow." This is exactly what we see today. Liberals get uncomfortable and suddenly they're not for equal rights anymore. Or more accurately, they still say they are, but they just have some concerns about optics. That's not how you're supposed to protest. Why can't everyone just protest peacefully? Why? So you can ignore it? The entire point of protest is to be disruptive. But even if we put that aside, no one wants to have to protest. They want things to change with as little friction as possible. But that's just not how things work when the oppressor class likes their position, and that position is dependent upon subjugating another class. It's like Castro said during the Cuban Revolution. The people did not choose the path of armed struggle. It was the path that was forced upon them. Same with Palestine. The number of tweets I've seen from liberals saying, "I don't understand why they can't just peacefully protest," is insane. And every single time, someone claps back with a different instance of Palestinians peacefully organizing and being killed all the same.
But of course, they're not saying that because they genuinely want to arrive at a reasonable solution. They're saying that specifically to run counter and to specifically run defense for Israel. That's why they're saying it. If someone is genuinely interested in learning, in many instances, they're not going to pop off this way. Okay, these are people who are masquerading as those who want to learn, that actually don't want to learn at all, They're simply using your interest in charitability, your likelihood of being charitable to them, as a way to hammer on a terrible reactionary narrative. Just a waste of time. Yep, the Northern Lion clip comes to mind immediately. Back in the day, people used to fucking troll, right? And everybody knew that they were trolling, and they themselves voluntarily recognized that they were trolling. Nowadays, trolling has evolved. People don't just come in and troll, but they go, oh, what do you mean? I was just simply being a small bean. I was asking a normal question. You're the evil person for not responding to my very obvious trolling with such vitriol. Oh, I wasn't just trying to make you mad. Why are you being so mean at my pointed question that immediately is reinforcing 8 different narratives that are completely false? It's very frustrating. Concern trolling is very effective. People do that all the time.
By the time King penned his letter from Birmingham jail, which you heard some of at the beginning of this video, he had become disenchanted with white Northern liberals, who had earlier in his career been his greatest source of white support. But when King started talking about systemic issues that intersected with racism, such as economic inequality, these liberals started to squirm. The comfortable whites who looked down on the Southern yokels for their ignorance and racism were now in the hot seat.
Here's the Northern Lion clip.
Did not return to a guy who shit on him in front of 9,000 people. Bro, he was trolling. Back in my day, 20 years ago, the trolls were fucking goblins, bro. They were like, they knew that they were doing bad things and irritating people. And then when people got irritated, they typed "you mad" and they won. They got permit, but they understood that they were the villains. Now the trolls are like, does anybody else think that this person should be locked in a mental hospital? And then when someone's like, you have been permanently banned from the chat, they're like, I was just talking. You are my friend. Like, what? Bro, go back to being a gremlin. Go back to being like a little demon in the wires instead of like, well, I was just asking questions.
Every fucking time, dude. It's so spot on. And it is so perfect. It's like, dude, we're not making an argument about free speech all of a sudden, okay? There is no philosophical underpinning. You're just being a fucking dickhead. And that's fine, you know? Be a dickhead, but just own it. The fuck is this new shit? Why are you acting brand new? Worst part is when people fucking also rise to the occasion and start defending the guy who's like very obviously being a dickhead on purpose. Because they themselves got that dog in them too.
Okay. Let's kill him. Let's kill this guy. Let's beat him to death with hammers.
Very annoying stuff.
Themselves. They benefited from a two-tiered society in which liberal elites were at the top. And so the complaint about optics was born. Look, Dr. King, we support your ideals, but the way you're protesting just isn't okay. This is the way liberals operate. They support emancipation movements in theory, but as soon as it crosses into the realm of the material, they become no different than conservatives. If violent protest is illegal, and nonviolent protest gets your liberal supposed supporters to condemn your movement, what recourse do you have to effect change?
You don't. That's the point. The point is, a lot of liberals want Palestinians to just sit back and die. That's it. They want them to sit back and die every single fucking day so they can feel like they are perfect victims, and then they can give them a little bit, just a crumb of support. Like, we can feel bad about it later, and we feel so bad right now, but we're not going to really do anything. But the moment that you say, okay, enough, you can't have an apartheid without any consequences, that's ridiculous. The moment that happens, they're like, these are violent, bloodthirsty barbarians. And this is coming from someone who openly recognizes that, yes, atrocities occurred on October 7, okay? That is why I said a resistance to apartheid is always going to be imperfect. I said that on October 8. That still, of course, didn't stop motherfuckers from yelling at me and saying I want Israeli babies to be murdered and all this stuff. I think that there are, to be charitable, yes, I think Hasan is correct. there are liberals who do want Palestinians to sit back, but they don't actually understand that if they sit back, they will die. I think that there are people like that. What we're talking about right now is so many of those who are like, what the fuck? You think like mass rapes and beheading babies, which, I don't know if it happened at all, but I am immediately inclined to believe that it did happen. You think that's the way to resist an apartheid? It's like, no one is saying that. Oh, wow. And then it's the most Redditor energy. Remember the thing I talk about with Reddit? Like, people love having these like massive Reddit threads, starting off with like a false premise and then immediately moving on from that false premise and like memeing about those false premises. Like, it's just like a bunch of dumbasses that are just, in a circle jerk, operating off of the original faulty premise. This is what happens on fucking Twitter all the time too. Like, straw men turn into just the actual reality in their minds, and then they just like make secondary jokes off of it. Like, lol, I'm gonna make a meme now being like, oh, I'm doing a resistance rape. And it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, you're already betraying the severity of the assertion, the severity of the allegation by immediately making jokes about it. Okay? Like, you think that, so I'm here to believe, I have to sit back and believe that like you legitimately think that mass rapes occurred on October 7, and now you're just immediately popping off about jokes? The fuck? It just doesn't make any sense. Like, you okay, so you don't give a fuck about rape. You just want to use it, you want to weaponize it against Palestinians then. That's all you're, am I, because you're basically demonstrating that you don't give a fuck about it. You just don't care. You don't care about it at all. You just only want to care about it as a way to win an argument. It's ridiculous. It's sociopathic. A lot of people show their asses like that.
There's a reason imperial core countries are actively trying to criminalize various forms of protest. They have a vested interest in things remaining the same. As Kwame Ture said in his 1969 book, The Pitfalls of Liberalism, what a liberal really wants is to bring about change which will not in any way endanger his position. That is, of course, impossible when we're talking about fixing the systemic problems of racism, imperialism, and economic inequality. According to a 1966 Harris poll, King's favorable rating among white Americans was just 27%. Compare that to 95% today. That's how liberals operate. They oppose any attempts at emancipation while they're happening, then pretend they were always on the side of the righteous when they have the benefit of history books telling them who the good guys were. There's a great tweet.
Yeah, the craziest part about it is that it is also like a well-established trope, and that's why it works really well, because they used it against black people in perpetuity. White supremacists did, liberals alike. White supremacists in the United States of America from all different political ideologies have so consistently utilized this like depersonalization, dehumanization tactic to be like, yeah, these are rapist, barbarian monsters, that like it fits so quickly. It just like immediately people are like, oh, dude, this is a comfortable skin I'm in. Like, I love this. I love this argument. It's my favorite. I use it all the time.
That really sums up this liberal tendency. A liberal is someone who opposes every war except the current war and supports all civil rights movements except the one going on right now.
Yep.
Now, while MLK was outspoken in his disappointment with white liberals, Malcolm X went a critical step further and correctly labeled them an enemy of genuine progress and liberation. The conservatives are wolves. You know what they're up to. They're evil and they're honest. Not because they care about being honest, but because they're not afraid to wield power when they have it. The liberal is a fox. Less outwardly threatening, even seemingly approachable, but still a predator. A conservative will usually be open about their racism and how they need to keep the dirty foreigners out. Whereas a liberal will say things like, I see you, I hear you, hate has no place here. And then they'll run campaign ads about how conservatives are failing to secure the southern border. Biden hasn't stopped building Trump's wall. That should tell you everything you need to know about the liberal approach to immigration. Pretend you're deeply concerned, and
Happy birthday, MF Killionaire.
and then do the same thing the conservatives are doing. Or take the genocide in Gaza. We've seen a handful of the more liberal Democrats speak out against what Israel is doing, which is no small feat for a politician in the United States. But then when push comes to shove, they do the evil thing anyway. As I'm writing this script, every single Senate Democrat just voted to continue funding the genocide in Gaza. Every single one. It's like the meme. The people on the receiving end of US militarism don't care whether the people who sent the bombs are deeply concerned about it. They're still sending the bombs. Socialists like me tend to joke about Democrats just being Republicans with a rainbow flag painted on their bombers, but it's absolutely true. The liberals' only objection to imperialism and global domination is on aesthetic grounds. They may say they're cool with gay
And sometimes they literally drop the aesthetic as well, like Brandon being like, illegals, it was an illegal murder.
people, but they're
Which, by the way, remember how so many people came into my chat earlier this morning and they were like, well, he was just repeating what Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying, only to have Biden literally double down. Biden literally doubled down on his usage of the term and went, nah, he's not in here legally. Well, he wasn't here legally, was he? That's what he said. They shouldn't be here. I kind of hate the still building the wall argument because there's some dishonesty built into it. If an appropriation has been passed, it has to be spent. Like, I think Biden would still build the wall if he had a choice. But let's not pretend he had that choice. Congress passed the legislation and Trump signed it. That's a beautiful way to fucking cover this nonsensical story because, one, Biden promised he would not build the wall. Two, everybody recognizes that, like, building the wall is just symbolic racist hatred anyway. It's fucking meaningless. And three, Biden did not have to use eminent domain to continue fucking purchasing and forcibly purchasing land to continue building the wall. And four, and perhaps most importantly, Congress passed the Senate that they're talking about passed a Brandon-backed piece of legislation that had $22 billion in additional funding for border security measures, which included additional funding that he is appropriating to build the fucking wall. He's now running around the country trying to get that bill to be passed in the House. Republicans, not once, but now twice, 2 times, saving the American nation with their petty partisan bullshit. Last time they did this was when Joe Biden, Vice President Joe Biden, alongside President Barack Obama, were trying to cut Social Security. And the Republican Tea Party caucus said no, because they were more focused on being obstructionist. They did not want to give a W to the Barack Obama administration, and they stopped that fucking bill from passing. Say thank you, Tea Party caucus, every fucking time your grandpappy still has the same level of Social Security entitlements, and it's not actually diminished as a consequence of the Obama administration, just like you should say thank you to the most racist white supremacist Republicans in the House of Representatives for not passing this border bill. Thank you, Republicans, for your petty, partisan, gridlock-focused attitude in Congress as you cripple the legislative body every single fucking day, because when the Democrats want to do some real fucked up shit and pass right-wing, white nativist immigration policies, you bravely say no. It is ironically the Republicans that are doing harm reduction right now, just so you understand. If you want to call it out as it actually is, those same fucking freaks, those racist assholes, are the ones who are actually engaging in harm reduction. Not the fucking beloved Democratic Party senators, by the way. And they're doing it not because they fucking, care about the issues or anything. They're not doing it for some moral reason. They're doing it purely out of spite. That's how stupid American politics is. That's why I feel like I'm losing my goddamn mind every fucking day of the week when I cover this shit.
We're still going to turn the rest of the world to glass if it means maintaining our hegemony. A good example of this
Did you lose followers or deals due to your support of Palestine? I have lost a shit ton of both followers and also brand deals, yes.
liberal pandering is when Pharrell
I have been warned numerous times over and over again throughout my consistent coverage.
recently sent Trump a cease and desist to stop Trump from using his songs at rallies. And
Doesn't matter, though. I'm not going to fucking stop.
then he turned around and performed at a fundraising gala for the IDF. The people who've killed 11,000 children in the past few months, who have targeted doctors saving injured people, journalists trying to show the world what's happening, the people who blindfolded a man, told him to run, and then sniped him in the back of the head. Okay, celebrities being useless is one thing, but when you have a liberal world leader, that's when things get really dangerous. Take Trudeau, for example. In response to one of the many ongoing protests for Palestine in Canada, on February 13th, he posted the following on Twitter.
Listen, I don't like talking about that side of the equation for 2 reasons. Okay? One, because like you're taking an L and you're openly admitting that you're taking an L, and people celebrate that sort of thing like my haters do. And two, it doesn't fucking matter in the grand scheme of things, right? I have 50,000 subscribers. I am powered entirely by my community. Part of that is what allows me to say fuck off to many brands anyway, which I still continue to do. So it doesn't matter when brands or an agency, let's say, is saying that my Israel-Palestine coverage is too hot. Okay? I hate it because it's like, oh God, woe is me. I'm such a brave martyr. I'm not. Okay? I live a very comfortable life. I'm not a brave martyr or anything like that. I hate it when fucking podcasters do this like, oh, my free speech has gotten me banned off platforms. It's taking away my fucking Honkai Star Rail sponsorship. Yeah, exactly. Or some shit like that. Not to say that that was a brand, by the way. That was not. Like, oh man, I was doing great, and then they took my Blue Chew sponsorship away because I said we should execute trans teenagers. What the fuck? I'm a real victim here. It's like, no, you're not. And I am not either. The real victims are the Palestinian people that are being ruthlessly fucking slaughtered. Okay? Make no fucking mistake. These are the reasons why I don't talk about it as much.
Twitter. The demonstration at Mount Sinai Hospital yesterday was reprehensible. Hospitals are places for treatment and care, not protest and intimidation. I strongly condemn this display of anti-Semitism. In Toronto and across Canada, we stand with Jewish communities against this hate. This is insane. If you've been online at all in the last 5 months, you'll know where I'm going with this. Justin Trudeau, liberal darling, has supported to the hilt the Israeli apartheid regime, which has bombed every single hospital in Gaza out of operation. Not only that, these monsters also dressed as doctors and nurses and infiltrated a hospital to shoot and terrorize the patients and heroic staff inside. To the liberal, walking outside a hospital and demanding justice is a bridge too far. But butchering an entire population because it serves the interest of capital is perfectly acceptable. The justification for statements like Trudeau's has always been opposing anti-Semitism. That obviously doesn't work anymore. It's an absurd claim to make that criticizing a genocidal apartheid regime is anti-Semitic.
Yeah, this is 100% correct. It was always correct, but now people are genuinely going, okay, well, maybe we've gone a little too far with this, which automatically ends up deflating the very real anti-Semitism that occurs every single fucking day. That is another secondary side effect of this. That's why so many of these fucking dipshits that I despise, oh my God, I hate them so fucking much, try to masquerade as pro-Palestinian people in an effort to try and launder anti-Semitic conspiracies on top of that. There is no clearer indication that one does not care about Palestinian people than using their death and destruction to lie and talk about other narratives and claim that like the Holocaust didn't happen or whatever. It is so fucking gross because one, you're advancing a very dangerous bigoted narrative. Okay. And that bigotry does lead to violence. That's number one. And number two, you are undermining the Palestinian cause and you are lending your commentary directly to the most vile anti-Semitic Zionists who will turn around and say, see, this is how pro-Palestinian people are really like. You ended up, yeah, thank you. This is a perfect way to put it. You end up denigrating two massive inhuman tragedies. Like you end up literally doubling. You end up destroying two causes. Yeah, this person, exactly. I don't believe the official Holocaust story anymore. I don't know what actually happened. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with these people? Fucking so gross, dude. It's so fucking gross. It reveals what your actual goal is. This, in my opinion, is no different than Nazis utilizing socialism or economic populism on the left to actually hammer on their true agenda, nationalism, anti-Semitism. Okay? Which is ironic because I think these guys are also Nazis as well. That's it. You start fucking talking about like Holocaust narratives or whatever, you're a Nazi. That's it. You're a fucking Nazi.
And it's become even more clearly absurd now that we've seen hundreds of thousands of Jewish people around the world stand up against Israel's ethnic cleansing campaign and say, "You do not represent us." All you have to do is look at footage from within Israel itself. Jews are brutalized by the fascist police for daring to speak out against the regime. The anti-Semitism charge obviously doesn't work anymore. So the liberals have fallen back on what they do best, weaponizing vague feelings. The main objection to rallies for Palestine now is that it makes people feel uncomfortable or unsafe on college campuses in the West. Here's an example that's been making the rounds online.
They want him dead! Please end it, please!
Aside from the fact that those are the most obvious fake tears you've ever seen, I want you to think about the absurdity of this display. Claiming to feel unsafe in your insular little university versus this.
مين بدك؟
أمي مع أخويا.
طيب أنت إيش؟
أخويا، أبو نصر كمان.
That's what unsafe looks like. You feel uncomfortable? Think about how uncomfortable it is to have no food.
Yeah, I can't believe how much we talked about that. Oh my God. That was so crazy. That was so wild. Like, there is nothing more illustrative about our privilege in the Western world, about people being like, I saw a free Palestine sticker and it made me shit my pants. That's the real danger. And have the media fucking cover that as though it's like a serious claim when like people were being ruthlessly fucking slaughtered, while simultaneously even the Arabs, Muslims, or people who are of any background, including Jews that were anti-Zionist and protesting the actions of the state of Israel, were genuinely like, one, being shot, as you know, the Palestinian students that were shot at. One of them is going to, use a wheelchair for the rest of his life. And we were still talking about Claudine Gay and shit for not being sufficiently pro-Israel, being punished, whipped around by the media. Yeah, the students at Columbia that were skunked. So many instances, like just such a glaring, obvious double standard. So gross.
Food or clean water.
6-year-old Palestinian boy, or 6-year-old boy that was he Palestinian? I think he was Arab, right? Or maybe they were Palestinian. Stabbed to death by their fucking landlord.
No shelter, no hygiene products. Your family killed. The places you've been told will be safe, purposefully targeted with bombing runs. Liberals have no right to cry crocodile tears and pretend to feel unsafe. Of course, they'll still do it, and sometimes it will work. There are very few weapons as dangerous as a white woman's tears, as minorities have learned the hard way throughout history. Enough pretend fear and they get what they want. In this case, the criminalizing of solidarity with the people currently being exterminated. I made a tweet the other day that said, "One thing that's been bothering me recently is that I have no power to make liberals care. I can say, I will never again speak to someone who still supports Israel, but what good is that? The hate and powerlessness I feel is something I haven't experienced before." I had one commenter respond with something I think is important to share. This is how colonized people have felt forever. Liberals act like they care, but they don't. They really, really don't. And their fake performative caring actually makes it way worse. At least right-wingers are honest. That's a great point, and it echoes what Malcolm X said half a century ago. Liberals are no better than conservatives. They're often even more bloodthirsty, as we've seen with their recent behavior. The only thing that separates a liberal servant of empire from a conservative one is that the liberal will lie through their teeth to make it seem like they're on your side. At least when a conservative says they want you dead, you can believe it and brace for impact. With a liberal, you have to be a lot more vigilant. Conservatives don't care if they have the moral high ground. They want what they want, and they don't care how you feel about it. A liberal will twist themselves into knots trying to convince you, and often themselves, that they are the moral arbiter of modern politics. Even the liberals who are critical of Joe Biden and the wider West's enabling of this genocide often speak out in a way that ends up reinforcing belief in liberalism. Take the recent drama surrounding Jon Stewart. He said some common sense stuff about Biden and really pissed off the vote blue no matter who crowd.
Yes,
but his
I
criticisms
saw.
also really resonated with the masses of more casual liberals in the imperial core.
I saw. Jordan Peterson's replying to HasanAbi fan channels now. I saw. You are an outright liar.
His statements were intended to air the concerns of people starting to feel cognitive dissonance about their support of genocide, and then to steer them back into the fold of the Democratic Party. Yeah, Biden may be too old for the job, but we'll do better next time. The most important thing is keeping Trump out of the White House. Things would be so much worse under a Republican, believe me. Never mind, of course, that things are only this bad because Biden, liberal champion of peace and freedom, has personally refused to call off his attack dog, and has instead spent billions of dollars of your tax money to fund the massacre of tens of thousands of men, women, and children whose only crime is trying to prevent the slow-rolling eradication of their people and their history. I could go on like this, or hell, I could just leave the video running and play the hundreds of hours of footage showing what Western liberals are enabling in Gaza. Children torn to pieces hanging from piles of rubble. A man so stricken with grief that he loses consciousness after being told his entire family has been killed. A beautiful little girl, my daughter's age, standing alone in the cold, waiting for parents who will never come back. But I know that footage will not soften the liberal heart. If they've made it this far and not changed their mind, they are irredeemable, and I will not waste any more of my time trying to win over my enemy. And for those who think I'm being overly harsh and that liberals are annoying but not really all that dangerous, I'll cite just one more historical fact. Every time liberals have been given the choice between socialism and fascism, they have sided with fascism. And when I say they've sided with fascism, that's actually a little misleading. Yes, normal liberals, the individuals, will always pick a well-dressed white fascist over a scary urban communist. But liberals as a political organism don't really choose to side with fascism as much as they devolve into it. Fascism is rooted in the same Western mythology as liberalism. Whereas in times of peace and prosperity, liberalism has all the frills and niceties normal people would expect from a first world country, as soon as the economic base falters, as soon as the lines start to go down, the mask comes off. It's often said that fascism is capitalism in decay. And if there's one thing we've seen with the United States since the Reagan years, it's that capitalism is on the decline. There's a reason we're always at war, why our civil liberties are being curtailed under conservative and liberal leaders alike, why Joe Biden is holding twice as many immigrants in cages as Trump was at the end of his term, why we're backing Israel to the very last Palestinian. When capital has to circle the wagons to maintain its dominance, its rhetoric and actions start to look a lot like fascism. The reason for this is simple. Fascism is seen as a solution to an economic problem, just as socialism is. But the difference is that fascism does not threaten the primacy of capital, or the comfortable position of the white liberal. Economic hardship creates conditions where bitterness, distrust, and desperation can thrive, making the masses an easy target for charismatic and bombastic fascists. I'll end with a gentle warning for new socialists, people who understand that imperialism is wrong, but who may still harbor some liberal ideology from their upbringing. There's this pervasive belief that if you just show people enough data that something is bad, we'll reach a critical mass of collective outrage and then suddenly, through legal and government-approved means, we'll be able to stop the bad thing.
Yep.
That's just not how the real world works. That's become abundantly clear in the last 5 months. Bit by bit, our rights to protest, to assemble, to speak out, are being taken away. The Palestinian people have tried peaceful protest for years. They've tried appealing to international bodies. They've tried everything. They are well within their rights to resist their executioners by whatever means they deem appropriate. No amount of liberal hand-wringing and phony moral objections will change that fact.
You don't get freedom peacefully. Freedom is never safeguarded peacefully. Anyone who is depriving you of freedom isn't deserving of a peaceful approach by the ones who are being deprived of their freedom.
A few times in the last couple years, I found myself thinking, surely not these liberals. Surely this friend or this educated person or this family member will be different. And they disappoint every single time. At some point, all decent people have to realize that liberals are as much the enemy as conservatives. They may weaponize inclusive language, they may try to trick you into thinking they care, but it's a lie. The Western liberal position on Palestine should be the final nail in the coffin of liberal legitimacy. And I know it's not my job to call people out like this. I know my role is to be inclusive and offer a charitable on-ramp into socialist ideas. But sometimes you just have to tell it like it is. Malcolm X was right. Liberals are the most dangerous thing in the Western Hemisphere. I mentioned at the beginning of the episode that my content is only possible thanks to my patrons on Patreon. For people who make principled socialist content, and especially content that's vocal in its support of Palestine, it's really hard to land sponsorships. In fact, I was in talks with a sponsor recently, everything was going fine, and then the rep hits me with,
Do you think that JT's correct about hating the liberals who approach Palestinian genocide? Does that contradict the problem of canceling others that you were talking about today? Can we change the liberal position through good faith? I mean, I don't have the same defeatist approach that JT has. That's why I regularly spend every fucking waking moment pretty much trying to change people's minds. And I get bullied and humiliated for it along the line. But the way I see it is like one person whose mind I can change is good for me.